Welcome to This Just In, the show bringing you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. And now, for the fastest voice in healthcare, here's your host, Justin Barnes.
Thank you for tuning in, and welcome to This Just In. I'm your host, Justin Barnes. In these segments, I'll bring you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. As always, we're broadcasting from the This Just In studios on the Business Radio X network, as well as the Healthcare Now radio network. For this episode, my 217th episode, we have a very special first-time guest, Stephanie Denvir from the HIMSS organization. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Hi, Justin. Thanks so much for having me.
You got it. So first, where are you calling in from?
I am calling in from my home in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, which is right outside of Detroit.
Sure. I heard it's a very beautiful area.
It is. I feel fortunate. I was in the Chicago office of HIMSS for many years, but we were virtual before this pandemic, and about 7 years ago, I was able to move closer to family, which has been fantastic.
Oh, that's phenomenal. So I guess kind of on that path, and to give my audience a little bit more best background on you personally, where'd you grow up, college, all that good stuff?
Well, I grew up, and this is where I came back to where I grew up. My parents live in the house I grew up in.
Cool.
And my sister lives 2 blocks away from me. So I thought, what a better experience to come back to where you're from and raise my children here. So it's been fantastic. And I'm a Michigan State grad, undergrad and graduate degree. So I bleed green, we say here.
For sure.
So, and then that brought me over to Chicago. I was doing some work for charitable nonprofits and had the opportunity to move to Chicago. And, you know, when I was just jumped on that, and been an amazing experience.
Yeah. So how did you start in healthcare and health IT? What was your entree there?
Well, really, I was working for international associations, and a colleague of mine had moved over to HIMSS and said, you should come and interview here. And at the time I said, you know, I'm not looking to leave. I was supposed to go to Africa for a trip. But when I went and interviewed and started researching what HIMSS was doing, I was just in awe of all of the work. And at the time, there were still paper records, right? And that just blew my mind because of my own, you know, personal health journey. I'm a cancer survivor, and I had experienced electronic health records. I was really fortunate. My healthcare system had their own electronic health system. And so when I was hearing, you know, the challenges of healthcare, and I said, I have to work here. It just became something. And, you know, that in the interview process said, oh my gosh, I have to be here. And it worked out. The mission called me, and, you know, 17 years later, I've still been at HIMSS.
Wow. So what year did you start with HIMSS?
In 2004, I started 2 weeks before the annual conference in Orlando that year. And at the time I thought, oh, I've seen big shows, right? I had been doing different conferences all over the world. But at that time, it was maybe, you know, 7,000 attendees, maybe 10. Yeah. It was still much bigger than I had ever seen. And fast forward now, you know, well, we most recently had over 45,000. So it has certainly been, you know, given me this amazing opportunity to learn everything possible about healthcare. I feel like, you know, you get a front row seat, the best education by being a part of HIMSS. And certainly, you know, the industry has changed so much, and there's been so much growth, not only within healthcare, but within HIMSS. It's been certainly amazing to be a part of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as we were talking quickly offline before we came on air, I mean, I was actually at that 2004 annual conference, because that is the annual conference where a handful of us pulled Steve Lieber aside and just said, hey, we want to look at creating an industry association. We have a lot of momentum as EHR vendors in the industry, but we also want to collaborate better, and we want an environment where we can collaborate and follow all federal laws and sunshine and all that good stuff. So Steve was, I think it was about a month or so of discussion, but right out of the gate, Steve understood what we were trying to do and said, no, we want that under the HIMSS family. We want you're all part of HIMSS. You're important to HIMSS, and just reached out his hand immediately. And so, you know, I'm, you know, forever indebted for that. You know, and we'll talk about that coming up, about what HIMSS, how HIMSS fed my life and path. And I wouldn't be where I am without HIMSS So I'm a huge proponent, but that specific annual conference is near and dear to my heart. So that's exciting. That was your first annual conference as well. That's cool.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. It's been amazing. And it's so, I mean, I feel like each year something amazing happens. It's been pretty incredible to see and just to think back at all the memories of what's happened each year. Excited to see what's going to happen for this year.
You got it. And actually, we'll dive into that in a second. But tell us about your role. For some way, we did not cross paths, or we did, but it might have been, albeit briefly. But tell us about your role and what you kind of foresee, at least in the coming weeks with your position as you evolve.
Sure. So I've done, as you mentioned, many different roles. So, previously where I thought, we may have crossed paths, but not directly. I oversaw the chapters program for many years. I led some of our user groups we used to have, membership, different awards and recognition, and I've done a lot of different regional event series. But currently in my role, I lead our strategic relations team. And we're really focused on building those important relationships, strategically important collaborative relationships to move HIMSS mission forward. We know that in order to really transform healthcare, HIMSS can't do it alone. And just as your example with the HRA, we don't want to do it in a silo, and we try to be as collaborative as possible and partner with other associations and organizations and bringing everyone together. So our team, we get to do that every day, and it's so exciting because no day is ever the same. We're focused on building out different partner programs to support our events and support industry initiatives. My team, when you mentioned the HRA, my team now oversees the HRA and works really closely with the leadership team of the HRA and all of their members, and there's so much great work that they're doing. We also, our team leads, works on the Global Health Equity Network, and the communities that are a part of that are Women in Health IT, our African American and Latinx communities. And then also we're focused on leading executive engagement with our members. So a lot of great work, all tied around, building relationships that really support the efforts of HIMSS.
Yeah, I mean, and I mentioned it briefly, and I certainly we're going to dive into some more, but I do have to reiterate the importance of what HIMSS brings to our industry, really an environment of collaboration, leadership, innovation. It fosters, it creates the best in all of us. It fuels the best in all of us. I mean, it allowed me to build a business, and I call it co-opetition. I mean, I built a large company in collaboration, but also competition of my biggest competitors. But we leveraged each other to grow the industry and to strengthen, the industry overall and put health IT on the map as it was, and then evolve where digital health is today. And so, HIMSS gave us that platform specifically. And I owe so much to HIMSS. So I'm grateful for this talk. I didn't realize that was all under your purview. So that's extremely exciting and very timely. Tom and the team said you're going to be a great guest. I didn't know how great. So that's
I would say one of the fun things that Tom and his team, where I sit, where our team sits, we really get the opportunity to work with everyone within our HIMSS staff, and even with so many different volunteer members. And that's, for me, such a joy. But we really get to, work with the team, Tom's team, to build those collaborations and connections. And how do we move, the work forward from a policy aspect? And, we work with his team a lot, and there's so many great opportunities to connect different policy associations, policy leaders, and find, how we can work together to move things forward. And so it's really, I feel, as I said, no day is the same. It's really fun.
Yeah, and the Tom we were referring to is our good friend Tom Leary.
Yeah.
Government relations group. Very cool. And also I noticed so maybe spend a moment on this because you just mentioned it as one of your purviews, but I also was reading a great article that actually, you're the author of, Women Entrepreneurs and Change Makers in Healthcare, and our good friend Miriam Paramore was in that. She was cited as one of the entrepreneurs. But tell us about, not necessarily about that article, but you can. But what do you got? How is that a focus? I've really seen a lot of energy here for HIMSS, empowerment, obviously diversity and health equity and so forth. But talk a bit about that perspective from HIMSS and all they're empowering in the industry today.
Sure. Well, specifically for women, I think it was in 2015, we did a study, we did our annual compensation survey, and we saw that not only, was there a wage gap between men and women, but it was growing, especially at the executive level. And so from that, our executive leader at the time, Carla Smith, said, we've got to do something about this, right? We launched our Women in Health community, Health IT community, to celebrate what women are doing, champion them, get the word out there, educate other women so that they can get in leadership roles, just so many things around the focus around women to advance their careers and hopefully eliminate that gap. And I would say that community has grown tremendously. We've over 30,000 members that are engaged, and they are so passionate. And we do our most influential women in health IT awards every year. We're working through those. That those will be announced this spring, and they get recognized at the conference and all year round. We're really trying to celebrate the great work that women are doing. And when we look at women entrepreneurs, we know that there's a shortage of women leading startups, and so we're trying just make sure, build awareness. We did a great session last year on getting women on boards, and as we know that greater diversity on boards brings greater results. And so not only with women, but even just looking at being more inclusive with our workforce in general. And I would say about almost 2 years ago, we kind of looked at our Women in Health IT. We had our African American and Latinx SIGs, and we elevated them all to communities and launched our Global Health Equity Network. And to me, what excites me about the network is it's really living HIMSS' vision of bringing health and wellness to everyone, everywhere. We're really trying to focus on, how do we look at having more inclusion in the workforce? How do we make sure the solutions that are being designed are thinking of all patients? We're right now running a maternal health tech challenge to look at the issues around maternal health, and there's so many great things going on. There's so many things with health equity that we could address. That we've been starting really focused this year on maternal health, but we know that there's other issues that we'll be tackling, and we've worked on a lot of different policy pieces, but really trying to celebrate the different voices, such as the Women in Health IT and all the work that we're doing.
Yeah, I love it. And even done a little bit of work just recently. I have my main business partner in healthcare and digital health is a physician. She's a female physician. She's an entrepreneur, founder of a company, and she's the current CEO of Cure for You, which is one of my investments. And I just love her. And I've been writing about her, every couple of weeks just to kind of share some of her best practices, but also just a spotlight. Like you said, there's not a lot of, there's certainly not enough. Female entrepreneurs and leaders, and certainly her, and even Monica, Dr. Bolbjerg, is actually a little bit different because she's also an MD. So she's a female, MD, entrepreneur, CEO, founder, and I just want to kind of highlight what she brings to healthcare to make sure we have a spotlight on that. It's very similar to what you guys are doing. I'm just doing my little part with Dr. Bolbjerg.
Yes. Well, and if we all do our part right, then we'll hopefully have more women entrepreneurs in the workforce, and just more people that are out there and being more inclusive. So,
yep, I agree. And I was actually just telling my wife last night that my two leaders of my teams are very successful females, and they are going to be. One of them already is an executive, but the other one's going to be an executive in healthcare. So it's just I know they're a tremendous asset, and everybody needs to know that. Everybody needs to see that, and to make sure that we have the diversity on our teams. So, and I know you certainly know that. So thank you for all your work there and all the HIMSS is doing.
Absolutely.
And for those tuning in, we're speaking with Stephanie Denvir, Senior Director, Strategic Relations at HIMSS. So we just covered a lot of ground, Stephanie, but tell me, what do you like about working in healthcare, and kind of, what have you learned, working at and with the executive level of healthcare executives?
Sure. Well, I think one thing, healthcare is constantly changing. We all know that, right? It's always transforming, and whether it's in the terms of how and where healthcare is delivered, or the services, being provided, or how it's financed. And I think for me, as as a patient and as a mother, I want really everybody, not just me and my family, to have the best care, but really everyone. And so I do believe in the vision of HIMSS, as I mentioned, and I feel like in my work at HIMSS, I'm really able to support and impact positive change. And so that gets me really excited. And as a patient, being in healthcare, I couldn't ask for a better opportunity than being here at HIMSS within this healthcare space. And when I think about the executives, you had asked, what have I learned? I mean, I've learned so much. One thing, right? Their job is so stressful, but especially this year, more than ever. But I think also it's a hopeful time for everyone, especially for executives. But I think you had mentioned innovation before, and that's one thing that I think comes out, right? I've learned that really executives, looking at them, they have to have a passion for innovation, especially in healthcare. As healthcare is transforming every day, the pressures are really high. They've got to do more with less. They need to be analytical and really be able to adapt change. And in order to do all of that, you really need a talented, innovative leader. And so that's one of the biggest things that I've learned, how important innovation is. And for them, to focus and really be able to prioritize and balance all of the requests that they're getting, because I think the pressures are so high for them, and so they've got a lot on their plates.
Yeah, and I want to pick up one thing, because I completely agree with you, and something that my mantra over probably the last 12 to 15 years, because I learned the value of HIMSS, well over a decade ago, like 12, 15 years ago, the value of HIMSS to me and what it was bringing to my career then. And so then when I tell people, I ask them, are you a member of HIMSS, or are you part of any task forces or committees or anything? Oh, no, I don't have time for that. And I look at them and I say, you don't have time not to do it, because you're only learning what you think right now. But when you start to collaborate with HIMSS, when you join these task forces, when you join these committees, or these steering committees and everything of the sort, or boards, you're going to learn so much more. You're going to learn more things that you had any idea about. You're going to learn things that you really do need to know, how and where the industry is evolving. You're going to learn very valuable collaborative skills. You're going to learn about innovations you never heard of or even thought could happen. But also, you're going to be a much better leader. You're going to be so much better, well-rounded. You're going to see more things that you didn't even know could happen in healthcare and in digital health, specifically relevant to you. So I cannot imagine leading a company or even being the senior executive in a company and not being an active member of HIMSS. And I know you didn't tell me to say that, but I know you can feel my passion about it, because I don't have time. I was like, you don't have time not to contribute or participate. I promise you. You may not know that, and I'll help articulate that for you and work through this with you. But I push everybody, any company that I sit on the board of, or I advise or help in any way, I always make sure their CEOs and their senior leadership team joins HIMSS in some capacity, because if they don't, they're just cut out of the flow of healthcare and where healthcare is going and health IT, and they just can't afford that. So,
well, I appreciate that. The check's in the mail. But no, I would agree, and you see that, and that's where I would say when I started kind of early in my career at HIMSS and really got to work with our chapters, I learned that right away, and their volunteers are really the heart and soul of HIMSS, and couldn't do it without them. And that's where hopefully they're getting, the value times 100 of what they're putting into it. But we really couldn't do it without all of the amazing volunteers. And so I love hearing, all the value you get from the work with HIMSS, and appreciate that support.
Sure. And I think we just answered some of this, but I'm sure you'll touch on maybe some more examples. But what are some of the, what are healthcare executives looking for? What are they looking to HIMSS for? And maybe even today, certainly in 2021, what are the executives today come up and say, hey, we need this, or how can you help us? What are some of the hot topics?
Yeah, well, and you certainly hit on it, definitely with innovation a little bit, but I would say, they're coming to us too, looking, of course, you'd think, for looking for tech solutions, right? That's certainly one place that they come to us for, and the research and insights. And from a topics perspective, we really been, digital health has been something that has, how do they transform and using digital health that's been something we've been doing. We've been partnering with another organization, the Chartist Group, and doing a special CXO series around kind of digital health transformation, helping them kind of look at the roadblocks and how they can move forward in this digital health space and be successful, sharing best practices. But I would say also, when executives come to HIMSS looking, not only for the resources and best practices for themselves, but they direct their staff here too, right? We're an organization that really can engage at all levels, and so that their staff have what they need to do their job. And I think that you had touched on this, but the collaborations and partnerships that, coming to HIMSS to build that, we're known and recognized as a convener. And so being able to not only connect with their peers and other executives, but other industry experts across the globe, or even startups that maybe they didn't know existed, and finding those connecting points so that they can drive greater success, I think is another thing that they look to HIMSS for. And I would say, of course, coming to us for all, we have a plethora of events, whether it's our chapters, digital conference. I think they're always coming to us for education through those forums as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one item people need to think about, and the reason why we turn to an association, because this specifically with the EHR industry, is there's a handful of us, like 6 of us, but when you look at all of our customer bases, this is back in 2004, I think we represented 60% or 70% of all EHR deployments were the 6 or 7 of us, and so we had to have antitrust protections, and that's what HIMSS gave us, and so that's really important. So I realize not everybody looks at that perspective, but you have, if you want an unbiased, mutual, legally protective organization, and you have a constituency, you should think about bringing it to HIMSS if they don't already have it. They probably already have it today, but if they don't, you can bring it to HIMSS. That's what we did. We realized as EHR, we had no one specifically looking out for the EHR industry back in it was called the EMRs back then, but we turned it into EHRs. But there's no one looking out for us specifically as an industry, and so we said, we have to collaborate, but with antitrust, we couldn't collaborate because we weren't allowed to with federal law. So we then that's when we turned to a couple of different associations, but HIMSS obviously responded very quickly. It was and like I said, Steve saw it, and I got to say, Carla Smith also was there. I do love Carla from the bottom of my heart. She's amazing, just a phenomenal female executive in healthcare as well. And she saw the writing on the wall, and she said, she and Steve made it happen, and and obviously it was phenomenal ever since. And now you're leading, that group. And I do want to mention Gail Arnett. Gail Arnett, she was our operational person for the entire 14 years that I was with, or 13 years that I was part of the HR Association in the HIMSS relationship. And Gail made us tick. Love her. She's amazing. Another dynamo.
She is, definitely. We miss Gail. She retired in the last year. So she's enjoying kind of the other side, right? But she's so amazing. She's phenomenal to work with. You were very lucky to have her for years. Absolutely.
So are there any other real needs? We've covered a lot of ground, but just from what you see, or what we should be thinking about as an industry or as an executive in healthcare, needs that we might have that you represent or you can help us with coming in 2021, and then maybe looking out to 2022. What are some of the thoughts there?
Sure. So I would say one of the things too from executives, we recently had this great roundtable. We were talking to some of our CIO members to hear what they're looking for at conference and just kind of how we could support them. And all of a sudden they just kind of went off because this year has been just so challenging and so many changes. They started talking about workforce and how to address all of the changes around the workforce issues, the new workforce, management techniques that are needed for this new norm, burnout, tools and resources needed. And, we were like, let's go with it. And it was amazing to hear. And at the end, they even said, oh my gosh, this was so cathartic. We need more of this. Mm-hmm. So I think certainly we're a place where, our members come to us for these conversations, right, to work through the challenges they're having and help identify tools and resources that can help them. But when we look at workforce, HIMSS has a whole team dedicated to career services and supporting the needs of workforce. And I think you'll start to see more. We've got certifications and great knowledge, great books and resources, but I think you'll see more come out from us around workforce, to support the needs of the workforce and support organizations organizations need. So I think hopefully that's one thing that will be really helpful for everybody. Definitely, I would say also innovation, as we've talked about, it's an ongoing theme. We've got so much work around innovation and different events set up to support kind of the latest trends. We're doing lots of different challenges. I mentioned our maternal health tech challenge. We're trying to identify new solutions in the maternal health space, but also you'll see other challenges rolled out throughout the years, to support the needs and welcome if any organizations out there looking to pilot some of these solutions, let us know, because that's a great way to get engaged. And I think you'll see more, new and exciting content coming out. And when we look at, some of the other topics our conference is going to address, you mentioned, and even this year, our conference is in Las Vegas in August 9th through the 13th, but we'll quickly pivot to our regular cadence in 2022, where it'll be in March in Orlando. So, you see, I think so many new and exciting things. One thing actually for this year's conference, and
one thing is we're actually at time. But let's hold that because we can have you back. No, this has been a phenomenal conversation and
awesome.
Yeah. No, thank you, Stephanie. You're amazing. I'm so glad we crossed paths now, and I appreciate you making the time to join the show. And we'll certainly have you back. And thank you to everybody for joining us today. Please tune in weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. As always, you can track me on Twitter at HIT Advisor and use the hashtag ThisJustinRadio so we can respond to your comments from the show. If you missed any of this episode or want to hear more, everything's posted on Apple iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Google Play, and tune in. Thanks, everyone, and stay safe.